Nostalgia is not Canada's trade strategy. That was the message from Prime Minister Mark Carney speaking to reporters in Ottawa today. The Prime Minister says Canada's relationship with the United States won't return to the way it was because the U.S. has changed it.
Look, you know what's an irritant? 50% tariff on steel, 50% tariff on aluminum, 25% tariff on automobiles, all the tariffs on forest products. Those are more than irritants. Those are violations of our trade deal.
It's just under 3 months before the July deadline for the CUSMA review, and Carney has stacked his new advisory committee on Canada-U.S. economic relations with leaders spanning industries, regions, and the political divide. One of those is former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole. Erin O'Toole, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
It has not been unusual in these Donald Trump-provoked NAFTA review advisory panels to see Conservatives sit on them. James Moore was on the last one, if I remember correctly. What was the pitch to you when you were asked to come on this particular version of it, along with your former colleague Lisa Raitt?
The Prime Minister, I think, wanted to put his own imprimatur on this committee. Obviously, Mr. Carney comes from a background in business and in international business in many ways. And I think he is, as you've covered on on your program, he is breaking with a number of the things the Trudeau government had done. So I think that's probably why he wanted to do this. And when I was called, I raised some of the issues that I wanted to have considered. And Janice Charette, our chief negotiator, who I have great respect for, she swore me into the Privy Council back in the Harper government, addressed those concerns and had no problems with them. So I saw this was going to be a substantive, serious approach because, David, I was aware I don't want to be a political wedge and somebody just appearing in a photo op at a boardroom table. I wanted this to be serious, and I could see already from the start that it was.
Okay, so you didn't want to just be a prop, right, to provide partisan cover, essentially, as the immediate past Conservative leader. So what is your sense of the dynamic you're walking into here, right, in terms of where the relationship is, where we are as a country in this review process that could lead to renegotiations of fundamental changes of our trading relationship with the U.S.?
Well, I think we're in a very much different position and a better position than we were under Prime Minister Trudeau. I was quite open as the critic for the NAFTA negotiations before I became the Conservative leader that I did not think they took the negotiations seriously. The progressive agenda that Minister Freeland and Prime Minister Trudeau put forward was never trying to find common cause. I didn't think it worked well. And this is clearly a different approach. And when I brought up the need to talk about defense and security in the Arctic and all these other things, they agreed. So it wasn't me trying to change the dialogue. It was agreeing. And I do think the Prime Minister has reset the tone. I think President Trump is still mercurial and difficult to predict, but the Prime Minister has changed the level. We look more professional. We're standing on our own. We're proud of our history. I like all that stuff, David. And I told Pierre Poilievre when I told him that I was taking this, that I thought there was a more serious approach and that I could help. And having a Conservative there would help, along with Lisa. So he agreed and thought it was a really good idea to provide some of that perspective. So so far, so good.
Mercurial is a generous and open to interpretation descriptor there, Mr. O'Toole. But look, you mentioned that you gave Mr. Poilievre a heads up on this, and he did say that it was great to see you were appointed to the committee. But he's also accusing the Prime Minister of not making his strategy for trade relations clear. And I want to play this clip. Here's what Mr. Poilievre said in question period this afternoon.
He has done nothing while the Americans have doubled tariffs on aluminum, steel, and other products and tripled them on lumber. No one knows his plans.
Okay, so excuse me, not in question period, but just outside the House today. Do you agree with that? I don't know if you reveal your plans going into a negotiation with a mercurial president like Trump, but do you agree with the criticism that there is not a strategy, as Mr. Poilievre is suggesting?
I think Pierre is doing the job he is supposed to do, David. The Prime Minister, as I've said complimentary things. He's reset the tone. He's a lot more serious, but he has also set expectations pretty sky high. And I think it's fair for the Conservatives, the opposition in our democracy, to say, okay, you're the new batter in the baseball game, but you haven't hit many singles or doubles yet. So this will be the healthy balance that I think the Conservatives and all of Parliament really can take, is that we want Canada to win. We want Canada to succeed. I've talked to Pierre directly about that. And how do we be Team Canada while also holding the government to account accordingly? I actually think the fact that myself, Lisa, and some voices that have probably been somewhat critical about resource policy or other things in the past are at the table. I don't think Prime Minister Carney wants an echo chamber. I think he wants to be challenged on some things. He knows that will make our negotiating position better. And I've said to Pierre, keep doing your job, but fight for Canada to get wins. And that's what he wants to do, and why he was supportive of me when I told him my decision to join this. He understood.
No, I can appreciate that. But is it a mistake to not spell out your strategy in public? Like, obviously they had. I mean, I've never negotiated a continental trade agreement or done anything like this, but I would presume with Janice Charette and Dom LeBlanc and, Mark Wiseman and Mark Carney and people like you coming on, there is a strategy, there is a negotiating goal. But is it a mistake not to spell it out in public? I mean, Trump would see it, Trump would know it. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that particular point.
Well, I do think Pierre has raised some really good things about some of our leverage points on energy, on critical minerals. As you know, I was just in the Arctic in Nunavut this week, where there's a lot of potential on critical minerals and what Canada can help deliver to the U.S. at a time that they need energy security. We're that partner, whether it's oil and gas or critical minerals. And the Trudeau government never liked putting that in the window because they were a little less supportive of resource development. And I'm trying to be bipartisan when I talk like that. Now we've got this Build Canada, this resolute desire to get projects to market, which the Conservatives have supported with the MPO and Bill C-5, for example. So I think Pierre's raising that is good. I think we should remind the Americans publicly that their refineries do well with Canadian oil and gas, and that our critical minerals can support the counterbalance to China for the U.S. and for our allies. So this will be the healthy balance, David. And the good thing, when I said to Janice, I want the ability to not only talk to Pierre and Michael Chong before this role is announced, I want to be able to do interviews with people like yourself, so that our committee is not some secret star chamber. We're really there fighting for Canadians. I thought it was great to have our cultural sovereignty represented, energy, financial services. I know they're looking at making sure all sectors have a voice, unions, and I think we need to explain what we're doing while keeping some of the confidential strategy obviously secret and confident. And so finding that balance will be what I'll try and do. And I think Pierre needs to push. That's the job of the opposition.
So there has been this push from the United States, not from the opposition, but on what they call irritants, which, to me seem like logical consequences of the U.S. actions. The biggest one being the booze being pulled off the shelves in places like Ontario and other provinces. The U.S. has signaled they want that dealt with before negotiations can maybe get going, and not accepting, I guess, the fact that this is in retaliation to what they've done to steel and aluminum and the other sectors. What's your view on that? Doug Ford says, no way. What do you think the provinces should do here if there is this sort of a request coming from the United States?
Well, two things, David. I think, first off, we can't feel we have to respond to every little tweet and Truth Social that comes out at supper time or at 3 a.m. We should not feel compelled to immediately move. The second thing, I think, and I hope all premiers can see the need for us to not have 10 strategies and not have an advertising campaign that might conflict with what the Prime Minister is saying and another province focusing on something. So right now, part of the reason I agreed to sit on this committee is Team Canada must have one quarterback. That's the Prime Minister, and of course the team around him, including Minister LeBlanc and Mark and Janice. But the premiers should feed the ball to the quarterback, and let's stay focused. I've used the term strategic patience is needed because the U.S. like to isolate us from Mexico. The president likes to fire off a missive, but sometimes that is or media, and it's not really going to change the negotiation at the table. So we've got to be able to persevere, not let ourselves become divided. And again, that's part of the reason I joined this. For me, serving Canada started when I joined the military. It wasn't just my parliament stuff. So I viewed this as a way to be part of Team Canada and to bring some of that perspective.
Yes, so when you're dealing with someone mercurial, as you say, it certainly is a time that calls for discipline. Erin O'Toole, former Conservative leader, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Good to see you, David.